if the sport keeps going with the trend that it has been going, you don't have a choice anymore.
Yeah.
You have to be good at these things, or your ceiling is going to be so low.
Yeah, this isn't your cousin's scaled program that they're following on another blog. Like, this is like a legit. No,
A new training cycle in our online program, TTT Compete, starts Monday, July 3rd. In this video, our coaches are going to explain what the training looks like for intermediate, RX, elite, and masters athletes. If you'd like to jump to a certain part of the discussion, check the timestamps in the description.
We'll talk about intermediate and what they're doing with all of the skill programs, the got none progressions, the strength bias path for those that maybe are following masters or the elite path. We all have particular things that we're working on, but we want to use this kind of last chunk of what we'll call our off season. That's the summertime to build strength, to build endurance, to build the skills,
To get tan,
to do all, have fun with the summer Sizzler, all of those things.
eat bomb pops.
Nice.
Or the creamsicles, whatever you want. So I think let's go ahead and start with intermediate and kind of talk about the structure that we're going through with the got none progressions, the got some progressions, and then what that looks like through the summer leading into what we'll call like really the start of our season, which will be after the games in August.
Yep.
Yeah, so for those of you who are new, the intermediate program is for athletes who lack all the skills or some of the skills to be at the RX level. You get stuck in the open, can't make it to quarterfinals because you can't do muscle ups or handstand walks or handstand push-ups, any of those gymnastics movements. So it's a gymnastics development path where the goal is to push you into the RX division or allow you to do RX local competitions.
This is even more important than I think I ever thought it was for people to really identify like the weaknesses and the skills and develop those first. Because again, going back to look at the open, quarterfinals, and now semifinals this year. And whether someone has aspirations for semifinals or not, just look at the testing. That's going to trickle down into quarterfinals and into the open if Bosman continues to bias the programming this way, where handstand pirouettes or really complex variations of muscle ups or legless rope climbs come out. You have to have just the basic skill first. Like you have to be able to do a handstand walk to be able to do a handstand pirouette. So focusing on that now is more important than ever.
And not just have the skills, but learn them in a way where you're building them with good mechanics.
Totally.
Because I actually saw this a lot in semifinals. There were athletes that I know are very good handstand walkers, and they could not pirouette efficiently because they don't have good handstand mechanics.
Yep.
And that comes from, how you learned how to do the movement. So we really focus on technique and mechanics in the intermediate path, and taking the time to do that, even though it may feel slow and you don't want to, or you want to jump back into Metcons and do muscle ups or do handstand walking. It's so worth it when you have the positions to be able to build on skills in the future, and you're not just going to like hit a wall because you don't know how to kip efficiently.
And right now you have time to do that. If you jump on in the open prep cycle, it's very hard to just like develop a skill right away. Like at that point, you need to just build a capacity in it. But if you don't have the skill, you can't. So this time of the year, you still have many months before we get into the open prep cycle. This is the time to jump in and make sure you're practicing those things.
Yeah, that's not always the easy road, but it's the right one. I think that path of long-term development carries over into many skills. And if you can start to kind of transform how you look at your training that way, it'll really help you develop the ability to learn learn the skills to overcome anything that's thrown at you in the sport. So even jump rope, for example, I saw, like you said, as an example, I saw a lot of people good at double unders, terrible at crossovers, and not have the ability to learn them quickly. Mainly because they have poor bounding mechanics and they only have this one pattern of just jumping and swinging their hands as fast as possible. So the same thing can be applied for so many other skills that we learn.
Yeah.
And I've had this conversation with a lot of my one-on-one athletes. If the sport keeps going with the trend that it has been going, you don't have a choice anymore. You have to be good at these things, or your ceiling is going to be so low. It's like how, with the strength bias path, the people in there, for the most part, they don't have a choice. Like you have to be able to move that barbell, or you will never get better at the sport of CrossFit. And it's the same thing here. Like if you don't have skills, no one cares how fit you are anymore.
Totally.
Yeah.
So anyways, all right. So in the intermediate path, what we do is we take all of the gymnastics bottlenecks out of the Metcons and put them in as skill work or interval work that's purely focused on improving those things. So you're not just going in and doing a 10-minute AMRAP that has muscle ups in it, and it ends up being 7 minutes of you staring at the rings and not actually getting any better at muscle ups. We're pulling that out and giving you time to focus on developing that.
Yeah, this isn't your cousin's scaled program that they're following on another blog. Like this is like a legit. No, I say that kind of in jest, but in all seriousness,
Can that be our tagline?
Not your cousin.
I didn't want to say. I didn't want to say your mom.
Ain't your cousin's smash burger.
Yeah, this is a real smash burger. But it is something that's going to actually, again, identify those weaknesses, work on those things outside of a Metcon, so that when you get back into testing true like CrossFit, you're good at that instead of it just being always, again, a scaled down version that's only going to get you better at breathing, but not better at the skill.
Right. So we have two pathways in the intermediate path. The first is the got none progressions, and that means that you got none of whatever movement we're working on. Those repeat each cycle, and it's technical work, goal of getting you from 0 to 1, bar muscle up, ring muscle up, toes bar, chest bar, whatever movement you need to work on. Or if you need a technical overhaul of the movement, and that's something I talk about in the path. Like if you come in new and you chicken wing all of your bar muscle ups, do the got none progressions for a cycle and clean that up before you start piling volume onto that. So we have got none, and then we have got some, which means you have one or more of the movement. And for that path, or that piece of the path, we are running a year-long development cycle where we progress the difficulty of the movements, or your ability to do the movements under increasing level of fatigue as the year goes on. So last cycle, we focused on just purely building volume of the movements. Can you do sets of 10 unbroken toes to bar? How long does it take you to do 50 unbroken, or not 50 unbroken, a set of 50 toes to bar? Things like that. Now we're adding in a layer of aerobic fatigue. So for example, if you run at an 8 out of 10 effort for 4 minutes, then how long does it take you to do 50 toes to bar? And learning that about yourself while also developing more endurance in the movement.
What if you can only run at an 8 out of 10? You don't have a 9 or a 10.
Then you might need to work on
do our running progression.
Right,
I'm going to go a little bit slower on this run.
8 out of 8.
So that's what this cycle is going to be focused on for the gymnastics progressions. We mirror the RX path's strength progressions, and then for your conditioning, we're still focusing on the same things as the RX path. Like I said, we're just removing the gymnastics bottlenecks so that you can actually get good conditioning out of the pieces. You're not, stuck at a certain movement the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, to explain that a bit more, right? Like if you have a massive bottleneck in a workout, your engine isn't always taxed in the same way as someone who's very good at those skills that can kind of roll through it. So like watching people do the quarterfinal workout that were really good at rope climbs, seeing them laid out at the end of that versus those that were not, they finished and kind of walked around. Like, it just depends on like how good you are at those skills and your ability to actually express inner power in a workout like that.
Yeah, I want to just kind of like hit this point home a little bit. And I know I was joking about the scaled program, but in all seriousness, what happens with a scaled program, something that's just like, we're going to just modify ring muscle ups to burpee chest bar pull-ups. That's the only thing we're ever going to do. One, you don't get better at the skill. So you never actually test that skill in Metcons, and you show up the next year, you're the same as you always were. Or maybe you get a little bit better at strength, but that's it. The other thing that happens is you don't actually improve your conditioning that much because you're still bottlenecked by the burpee chest to bar. So what we're doing is we're taking out those skills so you can improve your conditioning, what everyone wants. Everyone wants to build a bigger engine. So those the progressions that Mia's riding in intermediate will build, those workouts are hard, right? It's like there's no bottleneck, you're moving fast, you're building your engine. And then at the same time, you're actually building the skills. So you're getting better at both things at once so that when we put them all together in the fall, then you actually can do those things. And again, you see then it's almost like reaping the harvest. Like you're laying all this down. We're watering it every day. We're making sure it has sunshine, putting fertilizer on it, whatever. I know you love these, don't you, Chris? But then eventually now we can actually reap that harvest. And that's what it's kind of, Mike, you talk about this all the time. It's that hard road of it takes time and patience, but be a good farmer. And at the end of the day, you're gonna be in a really good spot.
Dude, mad respect for you never drop the thread.
Oh, I love it, man. All right. What's next? Strength? Thank you, Mia.
Drop it.
Thank you, Brent. That was great. Yeah. So strength progressions, kind of a similar overall theme for majority of the programs in here. We have gone back and changed this up a little bit as the cycles have progressed. But right now, with it being kind of the start of the third off-season cycle, if you're brand new to the program, you can still come in and like these progressions are still going to do a very good job of starting you from the very beginning of some new test retests. So we're still focusing on pure limiter strength. We're still driving up 1RMs, but you'll see a little bit of sport specific work sprinkled in this cycle now, just to make sure that we are following the themes of what we learned about the sport in general, of what it's done the last year, right? Like you saw a thruster tested that was on 1RM after a Metcon under fatigue. You saw heavy snatch cycling in a workout under fatigue with pressing endurance fatigue. Quarterfinals, you saw, what did we see in quarters? Oh, heavy clean and jerk cycling.
Yeah. And the heavy deadlift.
Semifinals, you saw, a snatch tested after a run. Like, so a lot of the different styles of strength now, they're not just pure 1RMs go out and do these things. But right now, those are things you still have to develop. You still have to raise that ceiling so that come time when we start training that style of strength testing more often, you're better at it, right? So kind of like removing the bottleneck like we just alluded to. So to give you an idea of what the structure and plan looks like, Mondays we'll have snatch complex work with back squat progressions. This will be consistent and linear across the board on Mondays. Strength bias will have a little bit of extra clean and overhead squat support work. When I say strength bias, that's the standalone strength program that we've been referencing. So for those of you that need more dedicated strength work, this is the program you're going to follow, and it's not going to have a ton of conditioning in it.
And just real quick, Mike, for those that are thinking about following that, it's still a great time to jump in and just do a strength program. We'll have plenty of conditioning work in the fall. Like you'll have plenty of time to prep for the open. Right now, the biggest bottlenecks we see are like the barbell cycling in quarterfinals, or even the heavy barbells like the thruster in the open.
Who would benefit the most by maybe saying, hey, I'm just only going to focus on the strength stuff and really pull back the conditioning?
Someone who only got a couple of reps on the clean and jerk in quarterfinals. Let's say you made it to that level and you did that heavy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 burpee box jump over clean and jerk, and you were the guy that was racing your first 5 burpee box jump overs and then just kind of waiting, putting
you're just trying to get the
right.
Or
like
if the 1RM thruster kept you out of quarterfinals.
Exactly. So funny you say that. This cycle we've got. Let me go back to the plan we're at. Yeah. So does that help answer your question of who this would be for? The strength bias. Mm-hmm. It's for those that are heavily limited by the top end strength.
What percentage of people do you think that might be out there listening? Just
yeah, I don't know. I mean,
33.33.
Yeah, I'm bad without context on that. Tuesdays include rope climb strength work. So this is where we're going to really develop upper body pulling strength, grip strength on more specifically to the rope implement. So legless rope climbs, rope climb density. It'll be followed up with some upper body pump work. So we'll see things like dumbbell bench press and farmer carry combos. We'll see bench press progressions with some handstand push-up stuff. So bodybuilding style, but a little bit more of like sport specific mixed in. So maybe some of like Linda style work, less some of the squat cleans, a little bit more focused on actually training the upper body with more of like a CrossFit feel to it instead of just like, 3 sets, A1, A2 type stuff. Isometric focused core work finishers. So this is just developing strength at end ranges to help with things like toe to bar, making you stronger on GHDs eventually and V-ups. And then the strength bias will have actual bench press progressions that are very strict and linear. Wednesdays, we're going to work on thruster 1 rep max development. So going back to some of the things that we saw tested this year, anytime there's like a new lift tested, I want to make sure that we at least run 1 cycle on it so that for those of you that this was a massive limiter for, like you actually had uninterrupted strength cycle development on this certain lift so that you can at least know, all right, if this comes up again, I did my homework and I actually practiced this and trained it this year for a little bit. That'll be followed up with some single leg strength work, posterior chain finishers, and then the strength bias path will have some extra speed and plyometric work. So just making sure that we are, continuing to train athleticism and kind of getting out of that. You hear me use the analogy a lot of training in a phone booth all the time. Like we're just squatting up and down. Everything's kind of frontal plane based movement, or adding in some frontal plane based movements where we're actually moving laterally. We're getting some rotational work in, and we're just trying to mix it up and make sure that you are maintaining some athleticism. Friday, work on repeatability of heavy clean and jerks. So we just finished a cycle of heavy snatch and clean and jerk 1RM. I want to change it up a little bit and work on cycling higher percentages of your clean and jerk. So there will still be some progressions and touching on actually getting your 1RM stronger, but it's going to be a little bit more focused on things like do 5 reps at 80% as fast as possible, or maybe do a 2-minute AMRAP at a certain percentage, just practicing the ability to cycle heavier loads. I actually see people get a lot stronger doing these style of progressions versus just doing like traditional Olympic weightlifting cycles all the time. And then strength bias, we'll have some front squat progressions in there as well, and then deadlift auto-regulated endurance work. So very similar to the front squats that we just did on this previous cycle. This is more so to just allow you to kind of get some quick touches on cycling heavy deadlifts without it taking up like a massive amount of time in the training. And then the strength bias path will have some bodybuilding finishers for the upper body, specifically delts and triceps for that day. Saturday, pressing strength in the form of handstand push-up variations. So, strict parallettes, wall-facing handstand push-ups, really kind of like the opposite of what we're doing on Tuesday with legless rope climb strength work. We're doing the same thing with handstand push-up development. And you'll see like a mix of strongman work mixed with core flexion-based movements, GHDs, V-ups, toe to bar strength work, etc. And then we'll have some extra strict weighted pull-up progressions for strength bias that also still need more upper body pulling strength. And that kind of rounds out what Monday through Saturday will look like for the strength progressions for all the programs. A little bit more or less, just depending on which path that you're following.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing too. So for those that are new, obviously you hear like we talk about intermediate, RX, we have a master's path, we have a strength bias path, we have an elite path. It just kind of depends on where you're at with your training and what your goals are. You would fit into that program, and then all of it is modified up or down based on what we believe is needed for that certain path. And so that's how we break everything down. And everyone's still following the same template, the same concepts with strength, and the same thing for CrossFit. And this, we already kind of talked about this theme, right? But we've been really focused on making sure that people are identifying their weaknesses and getting better at those. Like, we want true progress. We don't want someone to just go through and like beat their head through the wall and feel like they did a bunch all season and then show up next year and be the same on the leaderboard. We want you to actually make progress. And so that's why we identify those things and get you better at those. But eventually you have to test those things. And so like if we had this big picture theme, it is kind of testing the waters. Like, jump in after doing all of this limiter style training and let's see where you're at. And that's what the CrossFit's going to look like. And what we mean by that is, instead of a bunch of intervals that maybe have just like a finish with a bunch of rope climbs or one bottleneck with handstand push-ups or ring muscle ups, now we're going to put these in some Metcons for our higher level athletes. Intermediate, obviously, will take those skills out and they'll have a different programming. But for RX, for our masters athletes, for elite athletes, we're going to put those things into for timepieces, AMRAPs, chippers, all the things that are like traditional CrossFit style, with one caveat. We've seen this year the programming has changed, and so some of those AMRAPs may look still like a bottleneck, because now with Boz programming, it looked like that with the handstand push-ups in quarterfinals or maybe ring muscle-ups in a complex at semifinals. The reality is like only a few people could really fly through those things. So we still need some of those bottlenecks in there.
Yeah, I think that's important to train, because part of being a good athlete in the sport is when you are hit with a bottleneck in a Metcon, having the ability to figure out how to work through it is super important. And if you go in and you don't know what your limitations are on 30 strict wall-facing handstand push-ups, and you go in and you blow up and you do 15 at the start, and then the last 15 take you way too long. Yeah, like that's a performance skill in the moment. Like, that's something that you need to adjust and develop the ability to know how to pace that better. And you do that through practice and just through exposure and training. So if we only did intervals all the time, we are doing a disservice of not actually exposing you enough to practice that.
Yeah, totally. So you're going to see every week, you're going to have one or maybe even two extra Metcons compared to what we have done in previous cycles. So for those that are jumping in brand new, you're going to be excited about seeing more CrossFit. That's intentional, but we do it in a way that's balanced. So some days will be more biased towards what we call muscular endurance, like local endurance of the muscle belly. If I'm doing pull-ups, maybe it's my lats and biceps, where that may be the limiter as opposed to it just being engine-based. Then the other days will be more kind of like non-bottleneck, true engine-based, or the bottleneck would be how well you breathe or how well your heart works. And that's like what, when we talk about engine, that's what most people think is like, oh, I don't breathe well. We want to make sure you're working on both, because sometimes there's like a bias towards thinking your engine's not good, but in reality, it is just the local endurance. Like, my lats cannot support the ability to do 50 pull-ups or 100 pull-ups in a workout. So you want to make sure you're still working on that. So that's kind of big background. Some of the things that we'll look at we'll progress over the course of the 8 weeks. We're going to have a run squat combo, which is something that we haven't done a ton of because we haven't seen it in the sport. But now with the shuttle run, we're probably going to see that over the next couple of years. So it's going to be
that shuttle run thruster team workout.
Oh, yes. That was a run squat combo.
Right.
It was more like a hobble squat combo.
Yeah, exactly. The penguin waddle.
Yeah.
We are going to have a full 8-week progression, and this one will be pretty linear, where it's going to be shuttle run variations mixed with different squat variations, or sometimes we'll mix in some odd object stuff, some dumbbells and some other things, to make sure you're not just squatting every single week. So we want to make sure that all the combos that may come out, it's deadlift and shuttle runs, or if it's burpees and shuttle runs, or or if it's, again, squatting and shuttle runs, you're good at that when it comes out next year. So one of the days each week, and that will kind of alternate which day it is based on the strength work, we'll have that. Then we're going to continue on with our barbell, cycling, and gymnastics progressions. I think this is one that's like the true old school CrossFit. Everyone loves it. We didn't see a lot of that this year, but we need to make sure we're prepared for it in case it does come out. And that's like
you did, but not in the traditional sense.
Not in the traditional
sense.
sense,
The gymnastics were so heavily bottlenecked, and the barbell cycling was not for most.
Yeah, totally. And so we're going to have some that are bottlenecked, like you just have to finish with a bunch of ring muscle-ups or handstand push-ups or things like that. But some of those will be true, kind of that fast-paced, old
thruster
school.
pull-up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
10-minute AMRAP
burpee.
of those things where there is no kind of thing that's holding you back. The next one is pressing endurance. We've done this every cycle, and we're going to continue actually have some variation of this just so everyone knows all the way through the Open next year. Because when we identify, like I went through all the data from the Open this year and then quarterfinals, and I looked at where are the biggest separators, and it still comes down to pressing endurance. That may change as people get better or if they don't test it, but the handstand walk, the handstand push-up, even burpee speed, all of those played such a big role in the Open and quarterfinals, and I think we saw that even with the handstand push-ups and the legless rope climbs in the semifinals, that's something we're going to continue to work on. So you're going to see different variations each week. We'll have different ring dip variations, different handstand push-up variations, handstand walking variations, but that will be kind of like a benchmark that we set at the beginning of the cycle. We'll test it all the way through. And then the last one is last year we did a 20-minute C2 bike progression, which was a 20-minute max watt or at max average watts. This year, we're going to do a similar progression, but it's going to be on the row erg. So it's going to be a little bit different, but that's the thing that's tested most often in the sport. So we're going to make sure that everyone's really confident on the row before we get into our season prep in the fall.
Fun. What else? What about throwdowns?
Yeah, and we'll continue on with our throwdowns. At some point, we're going to bring those back to where we give you guys some demos. I'm throwing that out now, so Chris has to do it with us.
Yeah.
But I think that that's an opportunity as a community that we can jump in and have fun together. We can have a full leaderboard where everyone's on the same leaderboard. Sure, some of those we have different programs, right? Like maybe we'll have an intermediate throwdown and a master's throwdown, but everyone can still be on the same leaderboard and kind of see where you stack up. And for us,
for those listening who have no idea what the hell the throwdown is, do you want to tell them real quick?
Yeah, so Saturdays, every Saturday, we release the workout on a Thursday, and then we perform it on a Saturday. And every Saturday, it's just one workout that's like a true CrossFit workout. You know, again, for time or 20-minute AMRAP, or it looks more like an open workout or quarterfinals workout, and everyone in our community does it. So all of our individual clients, all of the clients that are on Compete, a lot of our fitness clients will do it, and so everyone can just post in that leaderboard. It's free registration, and it's a lot of fun. Obviously, we do it here on site, so it's enjoyable. Why are you smiling at me?
I'm excited to talk about the Sizzler next. Speaking of throwdowns, the throwdown of throwdowns. Basically, this is the third annual. So twice. Yeah, it's the third Sizzler.
I went for the drum roll.
Oh, my bad.
I got ignored.
For those of you that haven't followed in the past, twice a year we run an internal competition within the program. So if you're following the program, we build them in once in the middle of the year, and then once at the end of the year. The Winners Coming Classic is at the end, and then the middle of the year, the Summer Sizzler is another one we host. So it's a 2-day competition that we'll do around the halfway point of this cycle, and we'll have some things in training that will kind of lead into it, but for the most part, it's a CrossFit test. It's going to be 4 to 5 workouts over the course of 2 days. And we do this just because, again, like with the point of this cycle being it's time to test the waters a little bit, we want to make sure that you are practicing competing. You know, like if you're following TTT Compete, we want you to be competing on a regular basis. So this is our opportunity to put this together and just build some community around it. So anything else you guys want to tell people about the Sizzler?
I've had a blast with it the last couple of years. One, it always surprises me how fast people can go on certain workouts. And then there are also so many people that PR certain things. Like we've had max lifts or we do some gymnastics tests, and every time it's inevitable that someone PRs. I think getting in that environment where you have to compete is just like so good for the soul, but also like good for you personally to be able to overcome some fears. And that's why we do it, especially for those that maybe don't have a local competition to go to this summer, or they are waiting till the fall to do like a Wadapalooza or something like that. This is a good time to, again, test the waters, practice your competition or the skill of competing, and have some fun with the community.
Yeah, if you're a gym owner and you follow our affiliate programming, we'll be doing it in the affiliate path as well. So basically, we'll have gym-friendly versions of similar format to what we did with Winners Coming Classic. So we'll have the opportunity, if you have individuals that want to do it like as RX written with how we do it in TTT Compete, or if you just want to have a gym-friendly version set up, we'll provide that. And basically 3 of the workouts will be written into the training during the week, and then the last one will be like a partner-based one that people could team up and do together on like a Saturday. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It was really fun doing it with gyms last year, the last 2 years with winter is coming. So I'm excited to bring it out to affiliates this year as well. Last thing. So for those that are following the or the intermediate path or the RX, and we've talked about actually we haven't talked about extra credit yet.
No.
Okay, not the last thing. Yeah, I guess this is the last thing a little bit. Yeah. So we offer extra credit progressions that are written into the RX. They're not written in the intermediate, mainly because you're spending a lot of time already working on specific skills. So for those of you that have certain limitations on things, let's say that you can do all the skills, but you have like 1 or 2 other movements that you just need a little bit of work on, it's not necessarily warranting you to need to go follow the intermediate. But let's say like you can do pistols, you can handstand walk, but you can't do pirouettes, So we'll have extra credit progressions this cycle that basically help you work on that one issue or one limiter that you need to focus on.
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah, so the 4 that we're going to run this cycle will be handstand walk variations. That doesn't just mean straight handstand walks. There'll be 1 week that's all speed-based, like how fast can you move for 25 feet? The next week will be just 90-degree turns or 180-degree turns where, again, that may come out. The next week, we'll practice pirouettes. And we'll do progressions for all of these where you're getting touches. So basically, you just get more confident on your hands. The next one is pistols. We're not putting a ton of pistols into the CrossFit work. You're going to see that in some of the Metcons that we do. But this time of year, we really want to dial in the positions. I saw last year in the Open, like even people that worked on them that just did them in Metcons, it still was kind of sloppy, right? Like they could get through them, but there's a better position, a more efficient way to move with a pistol. So we're going to break that down a little bit with the extra credit.
Yeah, I think that's important to touch on them annual or year round because it's the same with GHDs. When you go such a long period of time without actually training them and then you start getting closer to the season and you just throw all this volume in a certain movement, that's where you start seeing injuries pop up. So we're not saying you need to accumulate 100 pistols a week, but you need to develop the position so that you can tolerate the volume when it is time to actually train them with speed and preparing for, whatever volume might actually show up in the workouts later on. So doing single leg variations, shrimp squats, isometric holds in the bottom, all this helps develop the ability to train that movement under higher capacities down the line.
Agreed. The next one's going to be jump rope skill. Again, just like the handstand walk, now we've seen all these different iterations. So the double under was like the first step, and everyone had to get really good at double unders. Now it's crossover singles, crossover doubles, speed steps. Maybe there's something else crazy that they add in there. So we're just going to give you a bunch of different variations so you learn how to move your hands with all of those different patterns, how you should jump, how you should breathe. Different ropes, yeah, totally. So all of those things will be in that extra credit program. And the last one is a continuation of our run training. This time of year especially, it's pretty good weather for most people, at least in North America. We want to give you an opportunity to get outside and do something that's a little bit different. So you could do this on an air runner if you can't do it outside, but I would prefer people to get outside, have some fun, kind of outside of the gym, but still build a big base with your run.
Yep, awesome. And then in addition to those, so that's obviously a very small list of progressions that we're choosing for this cycle. And we choose these strategically just based on things that we're building on an annual basis as we get toward a season. But for those of you, some still have some very serious limitations and other things that you need to do, and we get that. We don't want to write all of them into training all the time because, look,
everyone will do everything.
Everyone will do everything, and like you can't train everything all at once all the time. You have to have some focuses, and you got to work on things specifically. You also need to know what your actual limiters are. So we have something we're pretty excited to announce now that we're going to release at the start of this next cycle, Brandon.
Yeah, we are going to offer very focused skill progressions that are all 12 weeks long that you can get for free if you're a part of TTT Compete. And those skill progressions are made to work on that one thing. So it'd be in addition to the program, but we would recommend you just choose one at a time. So like for me, maybe I really want to work on my double unders. I need to work on my bounding mechanics and my spinning the rope. Or for someone else, it may be the snatch. Let's talk about each of those. We have the snatch, we have the clean and jerk, pistols, double unders, chest to bar, butterfly, so you're actually working on the butterfly technique, handstand push-ups, handstand walking, ring muscle-ups, and toes to bar. A lot of the main limiters that we see in the sport where these are very dedicated skill progressions. There are 30 to 45 minutes probably that you would add in addition. It's just one time per week, and you get after it, get better at those things.
Yeah, 12 weeks long, really 12 sessions long.
12 sessions.
You don't have to do it every week. You could do it every 4 days. It's really up to you and what your body can tolerate. Now, I would only recommend picking 1, maybe 2 of these, right? If you're also following all the other extra credit work in there, stick to those and then just pick one of these that you feel like needs the most work, because you can do another one the next cycle. They'll be there if you continue to stay in the program.
Yeah.
So again, what we're really trying to highlight here is don't pick 6 of them and say, these are all my weaknesses, I got to do them all. We've got plenty of these movements that are going to be listed in the normal training on a daily basis that will allow you to at least maintain certain levels of certain things. So just pick 1 or 2 of them that you need to focus on if you have the time for it.
This is just the next step, the next kind of iteration in the way that we program that allows you, the customer, to customize the program. Yep. So we have our normal programming, and we really put a lot of detail and thought into what you guys need. But we also understand that there are just some people that come in that maybe have all the skills, but they just can't do a butterfly chest bar. Like I'm still stuck at kipping. Well, giving you this opportunity where you can just simply, it'll be there. It's free for you. You just click subscribe on it, which we'll have a video on how to do that once we come out with these. You click on it, and then it populates on your timeline. Like, it's that simple. You pull up your phone, you open up the app, and now you can see your chest to bar skill program. It's a really cool thing that we're adding, but also the focus is making sure that you're identifying your weaknesses. Talk to a coach first if you need to figure out which one's the priority, and then add it to your program.
All right. What else? I think that wraps up majority of the cycle. I'm pretty excited about it.
It's almost time for a party with the Super Summer Sizzler.
I cannot wait for that final event. That's going to be so fun to watch.
It's going to be gross.
It's going to be fun to do.
Yeah, and by the way, we are going to post demos of all these workouts well beforehand.
Who's doing it?
We have a couple special guests. Alexis Raptis is doing one. The Travis Mayer is doing another one, and then a couple other high-level athletes. So we'll have some good athletes demo those. Don't try to pace like they do.
Will you do one?
No, the one that I would do, Alexis took.
Okay.
Which has bench press in it, so everyone can get excited about it.
Hey. Spoiler. Yep. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yep.